There has been so much drama leading up to this week of the Pearl store as unique items were released in the Korean, Southeast Asia, and Taiwan servers. These items are no other than the Sealed Ancient Book of Combat and Sealed Ancient Book of Life. Both these items pushes the boundaries of what is acceptable in the Pearl store while not bringing anything meaningful to the table. These items are usable infinitely in a 7-day period, along with being able to be automatically popped by a fairy's continuous care skill. The Book of Combat gives 250 LT, 250% combat experience, 100% skill experience, 25% fitness experience, along with notably a 20% drop rate buff. The Ancient Book of Life gives 250 LT and 25% fitness buffs, along with 50% life experience, 25 mastery, and 2 energy recovery. Even though these buffs may not be game-breaking, these items are pretty egregious, being pay-to-win only items, giving grind and life skill buffs, while also being gated behind a pack that costs around $90 US. After seeing this pack on the Korean server, I was definitely ready to make a video calling PA out for this insane new addition. That being said, when I woke up on patch day morning, I saw that this pack along with these new items didn't make it to NA. If we look at the Pearl store, we have the New Year's Thanks for Playing Pack 1, but not a Pack 2 with the ancient books. On the other hand, on Korean, Taiwanese, and Southeast Asian servers, they have both the New Year Adventure Pack 1 and 2. I was initially extremely happy, but my hopes were quickly dashed. It turns out that these packs were held back due to a bug in how they worked, rather than PA preventing their release due to community feedback. Much like other items with bugs and localization errors, it is likely that NA will see these packs in the upcoming weeks. The reason why many community members and I are so critical about these new items is that not only do they hurt free-to-play and lower-spending players, but they aren't even good for those who have pearls and are willing to buy pay-to-win items. In this video, we'll go over why these items suck for free-to-play players, why these items suck for people who have the means to buy these items, and what I hope for the future of BDO. Now, the reason these ancient books suck for free-to-play players is pretty obvious. Pay-to-win items that don't just sell for silver but allow players to make more silver per hour is not great. If someone spends pearls to buy all their gear, it's not amazing, but it doesn't negatively affect free-to-play players as much. However, when you make free-to-play players feel like they are less efficient when grinding due to a lack of a pearl item, it feels a lot worse mentally. Even though I'm not a free-to-play player, I'm always more critical of items that give more efficiency in silver making than items that can just be sold for silver, since it has that mental detriment for free-to-play and lower spending players. If other players are making 2 bill plus an hour and the only way to reach that is through spending money, it's going to make a lot of players feel a lot worse. The thing a lot of players were talking about is how the current drop event only gives 25% drop rate rather than the standard 50%. They attribute this decrease to the new ancient book, theorizing that they are locking the other 25% drop rate behind a $90 paywall. Now, I don't 100% agree with this sentiment, since with the same event, we're getting 6 ready to subjugate scrolls, and with the 10% drop rate from leveling a Deadeye, we get around a 45% drop rate from the current running events. This is pretty close to the standard 50% drop rate. PA has classically been very controlling of event drop rate bonuses, so it's likely that the 25% drop rate buff is due to this control, rather than them maliciously taking it away to try and have people buy this $90 pack. That being said, it's still not a good look for PA to ever release something like this, especially when they're dialing back on the event drop rate buffs. It can be very reasonable for a free-to-play or lower spending player to conclude that PA is moving drop rate from events to the Pearl store. Now, looking at this drop rate buff, some people may say, don't we already have this in BDO? The Blessing of Kama Sylvia buff does something similar, giving 20% drop rate and energy recovery, and that has been in the game for quite a while. That is pretty true, and I'm definitely someone who's not a huge fan of the Blessing of Kama Sylvia. However, the reason why these items have elicited such a huge pushback from the community is because they are new, unique items that took development time to make. We haven't yet seen a buff or a book be able to be continuously used within its duration, especially not through the fairy continuous care buff. On top of that, it was released through a $90 pack. Sure, it's technically a bonus item, but it is obviously the item that players are going to focus on getting, rather than just the random crons being half off. If you want to use this shiny new item, it's going to cost you $90. If PA had just included 3 to 4 Dragon King's wines, which has pretty comparable buffs, no one would have batted an eye at this pack. Spending development time to create a shiny new item that introduces new mechanics makes it feel predatory to some people, and like PA is limit testing how much pay to win they can add into the game. Now, this leads us to the next part of the video, which is why these ancient books of combat and life aren't even good for people with the ability to buy these packs with pearls. We're going to use basic pearl valuation methods to see what the value of these items are, and if it's even worth getting in a $90 pack. After that, we'll go through the mental aspect of why even players who consistently have pearls wouldn't want to support these ancient spirit books. So, what even is the estimated pearl value of these items? We've talked about the emotional side of why these items suck, but need to back it up with hard numbers. Because this pack is only sold on other regions, we have to convert their pearl values to our pearl values. In general, the pearl conversion rate from Southeast Asia servers is about 1 to 4 pearls. If we look at the New Year Adventure Pack 1, it should be the same as the New Year Thanks for Playing pack. The price of this pack is 595 pearls on Southeast Asia, but it's 2,367 pearls on NA servers. With that, we can confirm that it's about a 3.978 multiple to convert Southeast Asian server pearls to NA pearls. Now granted, I have seen this multiple be closer to 4.5 times on some items, but 3.978 will be the one that we use for this video. If we convert the cost of the New Year Adventure Pack 2 to NA pearls, it would be around 9,117 pearls, which is about $90. This is honestly really expensive, and you would expect the main unique item in this pack to give a lot of value for those who purchase it. The other items in this pack are simply crons, artisans, some buffs, and stacks, which at a 45% discount is really not that big of a deal. To convince players to spend $90 on this pack, you would assume the sealed ancient books of combat and life are going to be insane. If we look at the sealed ancient book of combat, which is the buff book most people are talking about, we pretty much ignore the non-drop rate buffs. The weight and experience buffs are nice, but not really that important. The big part is the 20% drop rate. But what really is the pearl value of a 20% drop rate for 7 days? In most of the endgame grind zones, the average silver per hour is about 1.5 billion silver. Of course, it's possible to get more or less depending on the player, but that's around the average. In most endgame zones, I would say that 10% drop rate gives around 30 million an hour. On Garmoth.com, a site that aggregates silver per hour, they say it's about 31 million an hour for every endgame grind zone. Now, of course, this is going to be based around how much silver per hour you're making, so you will have to value drop rate a little bit higher if you grind more silver an hour. This sealed ancient book of combat gives 20 drop rate for 7 days. 20 drop rate is about 60 million silver an hour, but the real question is how much you're going to be grinding in a 7-day period. Even if you heavily lock in and grind like your life depends on it, you'll still probably not be grinding for more than 40 hours a week. Even if you somehow manage to grind 40 hours, this buff only gives you an increase in silver of about 2.4 billion for grinding the entire week. 60 million silver per hour for 40 hours is only 2.4 billion. Now, 2.4 billion silver is a lot, but if we had to convert it to pearls, it would be closer to 1.1 of a premium outfit, or about 4,000 pearls. If we added the 4,000 pearl value to the value of this pack would have a discount equivalence of about 55 to 60%. The numbers are really messed up because we only have the SEA pearl values, but it would be around that number. Having to pay $90 and then grind 40 hours in BDO for a 60% discount equivalence at best is simply not worth it for most people. If you looked at this pack and instead of these buff books, there was just 1.1 premium outfit boxes as a bonus, most players would probably skip this pack. There are definitely a lot better pearl deals out there that don't require grinding 40 hours. In fact, the Blacksmith Shiny boxes are still up right now and they give a discount equivalent of 79%, and all of the item drops are mostly crons, artisans, and fail stacks that don't require grinding. So now that we know based on numbers that this is not a very good item value-wise, what about the mental aspect of this item? Even if this pack was worth it for people who have pearls, nobody wants another buff that they have to rotate. This would basically be another Blessing of Kama Sylvia or Old Moon book. Currently, people who want to rotate all three buffs are already paying 1,500 pearls for a 30-day value pack, 2,500 pearls for a 30-day Kama Sylvia blessing, and 2,500 pearls for an Old Moon book. This is around $65 a month, which is pretty insane for an alternative to an MMO subscription. For people who don't know, PA used to sell the regular Book of Combat and Book of Life that only gave experience buffs on the Pearl store. Because PA admitted themselves that this was a poor game mechanic and it was too chaotic to juggle that many buffs, they eventually removed them from the Pearl store and added the experience buffs to the Secret Book of Old Moon, streamlining the buffs that players had to juggle. Them reintroducing these buffs, making them even more powerful while keeping their already bloated 3 buffs, is absolutely abominable behavior. It signals to players that PA no longer has the same care on BDO that they did in the past, which is especially prominent since they've admitted in the past that too many buffs was bad game design. Them going back on their word now just seems like they're being opportunistic and trying to get as much money as possible. So, even if you are someone who's willing and able to buy this pack for pearls, it's not something you really want in the game since it's not even a worthwhile buff and promotes even more egregious pay-to-win features down the line. Just because you can spend money on BDO doesn't mean you want to get sucked dry from complete bloat buffs. Again, the part that is making people angry isn't even the 20% drop rate or the extra life-skilling mastery. It's the brazen show of lack of care and moving towards a more toxic Pearl store. Introducing a new item that only lasts 7 days through a $90 pack is just too much to swallow, even for the average player who spends pearls. So now that we know the gist of the sealed ancient books, some of you may be interested about my opinion on the life skill book. The life skilling book is weird since it's better compared to the combat book, but life skilling has always been more pay to win compared to grinding. Life skill mastery is akin to drop rate and drop amount for most life skills compared to the Book of Combat only giving drop rate. It's definitely a bigger boost for life skillers. On top of that, life skill experience does matter a lot more since you get mastery up until Guru 50. Combat experience, on the other hand, doesn't matter as much since most of the level benefits cap out at around level 62. The energy regen is also pretty helpful for people who hunt or gather. Now, the life skill book is better than the combat books in terms of pure buffs, but the reason why I say it's not as bad is because for some reason, pay to win has been normalized for life skilling. Life skill mastery explicitly increases the silver per hour you're expected to get, and never should be locked behind a pay-to-win item. However, we've previously got the fishing backpack, which gives 100 fishing mastery, which gives a blatant advantage to those who have it. On top of that, the cook's clothes have always been extremely pay-to-win, as if you don't have this outfit, you'll simply get less money from cooking by quite a large margin. I really do hope that PA doesn't keep making life skilling even more pay-to-win, but it really seems like that's the direction that they want to go, so this book honestly doesn't surprise me at all. Overall though, much like the sealed ancient Book of Combat, I'd prefer it not exist. So that's kind of the big conclusion of this new item. It's good for nobody, even people who are willing to spend the money to get these buffs. On top of that, it makes people who don't have enough money to spend on it feel worse, since it feels like their silver grinding efficiency is getting gated by pearls, even harder than it once was. The worst part is, as mentioned earlier, that this is not some throwaway drop buff item. It's an item that took development time to create, which has a new mechanic never seen from before. They've even walked back on one of their game design philosophies of limiting the paid buffs to only the value pack, Blessing of Kama Sylvia, and Secret Book of Old Moon. This is something that PA had to have put a decent amount of thought into, along with time and effort to make, and yet it just sucks for everybody. Now, with all of that being said, this item did not get released in the global servers due to a bug in the health experience buff. Since I'm not partnered with PA, I don't know if they intend to release them after they fix the bug, or if they'll simply not release it for NA. The funny part is, I initially thought that PA held back the sale of this item due to criticism from the community. This video was framed to be more critical of PA in the beginning, then pivots to a more positive and uplifting message, talking about how even though PA made a mistake releasing these items, at least they are learning from it and changing it in the future. Now that PA announced the item being held back was due to a bug instead of a decision from the developers, the positive messaging pivot is kind of gone. All we have left is a pretty critical dissection of how this item helps nobody, not free-to-play or pay-to-win players. That being said, the core argument of this video is still a positive one. These ancient books of combat and life are poorly designed items, but the reason I'm making this video is to try and incite positive change. I do believe that PA is open to criticism and genuinely want the best for BDO and their player base. The reason why some players may be a little overly passionate about some of these new items and patches is because they genuinely care and love the game. This is why I still love playing the game and put so much time and effort into content around BDO. It is a solid game with a passionate community based around it. All we can really hope for is that PA listens to our concerns and does not make the ancient books a new buff that they rotate on the Pro Store every event. But now it's really up to PA to decide whether or not to listen to the community feedback or to keep selling this book. This is just my opinion, and maybe other people have different sentiments around this item. I am curious what you all think about these buffs, and maybe I am being a little bit too critical. I generally prefer making more positive content, but that doesn't mean that I will always agree with everything that PA does. Anyways, I hope you all learned something from this video, and I hope to see you all next time.